So right now we're working purely in this db.js, which is fine. It's totally fine to just get to know Sequelize by creating a file, running code within that file, doing a sync and this sort of thing. But eventually we're going to have to pull this out and we're going to have to use this in a different part of our application, right? Different parts of our application are going to end up relying on this data layer. A good chunk of our back-end application is going to be relying on it. Especially our routes where we're returning data and allowing data to be updated. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a sync. I call it sync and seed. You could call it whatever you want to call it. It doesn't really matter. But this is going to be my method that's going to end up not only creating my tables, but it's also going to seed my data. And since there's an await here, I've got to put an async here. And I'm going to call sync and seed. Now, eventually, I'm going to not call it within this file, and I'm going to allow whoever is using this data layer to make a determination of when they want to sync and seed. But this should do the same thing that it's been doing up to this point. And at this point, we haven't put in any data. So let's just see how we can end up creating some data. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to say foo category equals, and I'm going to say category. So each of these models, again, we do these with a capital. We could end up recognizing them a little bit better here. Category, we have the ability to create. And we're going to create, and I'm just going to call this name the foo category. And I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to do one more, and this is going to be bar. And this is going to be the bar category. And both of these are asynchronous. So if I want this to work, I'm going to have to put an await here and an await here. And if I do that, I'll see now that I'm actually inserting some data. I see placeholders for this data. My guess is they don't show the value maybe for security. Maybe there's a way to turn that on. But we just see $1, 2, 3, and 4 here. And now if I went back to my pSQL and I say select star from categories, I'll see that I have these two categories with these two GUIDs, and the created at date and the updated at date are the same values. Again, that ends up going in there automatically, but our ID ends up getting generated here. And this is totally fine, but we realize that we're doing these one right after the other. And we really could do them at the same time. So we could do a little bit of destructuring by saying foo category and bar category. And what we could do here is we could put an await, and we could do a promise.all. And we could do a promise.all, and within the promise.all takes an array. And here's one promise. And we'll go over here. And here's another promise. And again, it's important to realize that await totally stops things, so it wouldn't make any sense to put the await here. But now what we have is and actually let me fix this as well, right? We're going to do category create. So we've got one promise, and we've got another promise, and we put both of them in promise.all. And what we're really saying here is, like, we don't care which one of these gets created first or which one gets created last. And we could even go a step further, make our lives a little bit easier, and say we've got the Baz category here as well. And we'll go over here and we'll say Baz category. And if I was to go over here and look at NodeMon, I would see my three categories here. And if I was to go over here and actually console.log, it's kind of interesting. So if I console.log foo category, I'll end up getting a lot of information because Sequelize is actually tracking not only the underlying data, but also how it ends up changing. And there's also methods that we can end up calling on this object. So when we look at this lowercase foo category, this is really, again, giving us access to a row in the database. We ended up just creating it. And so we get a lot of data here. We get the underlying data. We could actually see it up here. Right, our data values are here, and if we wanted to, we could just end up looking at our data values. And again, this can end up being pretty powerful, and we'll look at some of these other things we could end up doing with what we call an instance. So category create gives us an instance of category. Category is the model. Category create is an instance of that. And again, it corresponds to a row in the database. And if we just wanted to see the data values themselves, we could do data values, but we could also call get. And this is just, it's synchronous. It basically says, I'm going to end up giving you just the data values that you're interested in. And then sometimes that's really just enough to go off of, right? If we wanted to do this with bar category, we could end up doing the same thing. And while we're at it here, let's just go over here. And let's also go in and put a promise.all. And here what we're going to do is we're going to do just, let's now do foo1. And we're going to have foo2. And we'll have foo3. And let's just have a bar1. And so here, this is not going to be category. This is going to be product. So now we're going to create 3 products. And we'll go over here, and we're going to go over here, and we'll say the name here is going to be just, let's say, foo1. This is going to be foo2. Again, we're destructuring, so it's got to be in the right order. This will be foo2. This will be foo3. Let's be consistent. And we'll also have a bar1. And if we do that, we'll see that we're creating these 3 categories. We're creating these 4 products. These will end up getting created in the same way that I did a console.log. I could do foo1.get, which again just gives me its underlying data values. And I could see here the underlying data values of foo1, and I could always go back here to my P-SQL, and if I wanted it to maybe read a little bit easier, I could just say, hey, select name from products. And I would get the 3 products that I just ended up creating. So again, just an easy method that we'll end up using later on. Right now, we're just testing it out. Again, nothing wrong with just going in and testing out your Sequelize models without the noise of Express, just isolating them and testing them on their own. Let's get rid of this console log. And next up, we'll talk about how we connect these 2 models together.